it's time for those most famous words in motorsports. Drivers, start your engines!
Right, I'm here.
Michael Conti comes up at a corner number 4 in the checkered flag. He wins his first NASCAR iRacing.
After 4 races in a row on the road courses, the ISOWC IndyCar Series goes back to the ovals here today under the shining light of Richmond International Raceway. With Vincent along with Jake Cameron, Scott Woodward as we get set to go racing today. So 250 laps here in the ISOWC IndyCar Series, and we had drivers who are very fast on road courses, people like Michael Dinkle. They are fast also on the ovals, and that is going to mean that we're going to get ourselves a great race here today. Over 200 drivers have qualified for this 250 lap event, and the guys are just finishing qualifications right now on the racetrack. I'm going to come to you first, Jake. It does seem to be that after a dominant performance on the road courses, Michael Dinkle is fast once again here on the ovals.
Yeah, Michael Dinkle again showing a brilliant performance in qualifying. P3 currently sits. He's been dominating this championship so far, especially on the road courses, winning by about 20-25 seconds each race. So very consistent from him, but a regular up there as well, Niall McBride. Not done the best of a start on the road courses, but he had a really good strong showing at our first race at New Hampshire, I forgot where we were for that first one, but really strong showing from Niall McBride again, a really good oval racer, Matt Kingsbury down there, Gary Borkenhagen as well, up into P7 in qualifying as well. Really strong performance from them oval guys, so that's where they're going to be strongest, but Michael Dinkle, he really needs to stay strong on the oval side.
But Scott, the guy who's on pole position right now, Tim Doyle, of course, the former winner of the iRacing.com Indianapolis 500. He's a guy who's won many championships on the iRacing.com service, and he starts this race in that number 11 Point Wayne's machine on pole position.
Yeah, great performance so far from Tim, of course. I think it's one of the first times we've seen him properly in this season, of course, and he's certainly come towards the ovals with a massive impact. Pole position straight away, and Michael Dinkle, the man who makes a dominant on the road courses, only third quickest, but it still shows that he is very much of an all-rounder in these Dallara Indy cars. And also guys up there who did run particularly well at the first opening round, which I believe was actually at Homestead, was drivers like James McClure, Nigel Marneef, and also Gary Borkenhagen, all up there in the top 10 doing a great job. Guys are up there in the top 10 of the championship, challenging Michael Dinkle. Guys like Robert Grosser, Tima Isanyemi, not exactly up there so far. Grosser's 10th to Isanyemi 12th, so they're going to have to try and fight it out today, possibly see how they can get on with this 3/4 mile oval, but certainly going to do the best they can. But yeah, I do agree. Tim Doyle coming into the series with an impact, pole position straight away.
So then, to run through your starting grid for this event, it is going to be Tim Doyle will be starting on the inside of row number 1 with Eric Davis alongside him on that front row. Michael Dinkle and Noel McBride line up alongside each other on row number 2 with Jim McClure and Nigel Moneve lining up in row number 3. Gary Bockenhagen and Matt Kingsley lining up in row 4 with Michael Armstrong and Robert Grosser in the 5th row on the racetrack. Christian Mansoon and teammate Isiniemi lining up in row 6. Dave Jinks and Grease in row number 7. Cam Stark, Michelle De Jong in row number 8. And then it is Raymond Lopez and Scott Smith in row 9. Tim Miller and Narjan Michael Kirkin in the 10th row on the racetrack. A total of 23 drivers have made the start here for Richmond International Raceway, and I tell you what, of all the ovals we've got here this season, Jake, the ISOWC at Richmond is arguably the most difficult.
Yeah, one of the smallest and tightest tracks on the series. Really hard to manoeuvre. You've got to get that precision turning in. If you make one mistake around here, it can either end your race or it could end a big group of cars races we saw in practice. There was a few big pile-ups where drivers have just hit tiny bit scraped the wall on the exit of 4. That's probably the most trickiest bend of the track, as drivers will really push on around there. And on the exit of 2, them bends are really going to play a big effect into this. But definitely, as you said, Will, one of the harder tracks, so it'll be interesting to see how the more skilled drivers take to this one at the start.
And also, Jake, remember, we're running under daytime conditions. Most of these drivers are used to running under nighttime conditions here. Today, we got the sun out, we're running under nighttime conditions, track temperature 84 degrees, and that's going to have a big impact on the way these cars handle this racetrack.
Yeah, all drivers that obviously race the Open Series are going to have their setups, but the setups for the night and their temperatures and the wind are not really going to be very useful in the day, because the grip levels and everything is completely different. So drivers will have to get used to that, as I think we're about to go green flag, Will.
Well, the pace car, you see the lights are off on it right now. We are going to get set to have our pace car work itself down pit road next time by. 2 pace car laps here at Richmond because of the fact that it is an oval less than 1 mile in length. But Scott, who are you looking forward to here today?
Well, it's going to be intriguing how Michael Dinkle deals with the oval. Of course, 3rd quickest. Of course, he's going to try and keep his momentum up. But seriously, the front 2 of Tim Doyle and Eric Davis. Doyle was on pole by half a tenth of a second. So on the ovals, that can be quite a lot. So I think Doyle possibly could have the edge. If Dinkle can work himself up towards the front, he could definitely prove himself to be an all-rounder. But I have to watch out for those guys on the front row. Either Doyle or Davis are going to take it today, I think.
Jake?
We obviously got to look out for Tim Doyle. He is one of the best oval drivers in the IndyCar Series. But I think, looking down the field, I think we're going to see an upset maybe from Gary Borkenhagen or the Fast Eddie Racing Michael Armstrong.
Pace car going to work itself out of corner number 4. Make that journey down towards pit road. Ladies and gentlemen, the 6th round of the 2014 ISOWC IndyCar Series starts right now here on RaceSpotTV. Tim Doyle gets a good jump there from pole position. Eric Davis side by side right now with Dinkle as they go down into that first corner. Dinkle will get the jump there on Eric Davis down on the first lap of the race. And I'll tell you what, that was a good, hard, clean pass there down into turn number 1 there, Jake.
Yeah, really good pass there from Michael Dinkle. He's making the best of the start as he could. Straight away, he needs to move out. He needs to get into that clean air and travel and not let Tim Doyle get away, because he really needs to get this victory, because Tim Doyle on the oval tracks can really gain some points. But really clean start by all the drivers. Matt Kingsbury making 2 positions up there straight off the start as well, getting past Borkenhagen and Nigel Moneve. Michael Armstrong also managing to do that as well. Moneve actually seems to be dropping back a lot. He is one of the stronger road guys as well, Will, so he's going to have to struggle on the ovals.
Yeah, Moneve was now down into the 9th position on the racetrack. He has lost himself a total of 3 places since the start of this race. However, this is a long race as well, 250 laps. It can go very quickly, it can go very slowly, depending on cautions. But you have to say out front, it was Tim Doyle who got himself a perfect jump from pole position. Michael Dinkle was able to get going from the inside of that 2nd row on the racetrack to get himself past Eric Davis, and that is all good for him right now. But you've got to say at the same time though, Scott, but Michael Dinkle is not his short-term running, which is important, of course, because on ovals you get cautions. For Dinkle, it's about, what happens if this race goes green for 20, 30, 40, 50 laps, and how can he deal with the pressure and his car, which is going to change throughout the course of the event if that happens.
There's a very good point. Because we've been mostly running on road courses apart from the opening round of the championship, we haven't really seen how Michael deals with caution periods all too much. Because, to be fair, they've been very few and far between on the road courses that we've run so far. Now we're on a short one at that, less than a mile. That can always breed trouble. And of course, because it's a circuit that, as far to my knowledge, is mostly a NASCAR circuit when you run stock car racing rather than single-seater ovals. It's a circuit that really, it's almost a bit of an unknown quality in terms of exactly how these cars are going to cope. But it should be intriguing because Michael Dinkel, of course, it should be used to the setup of this car, especially the aerodynamics, because all the cars are running effectively the high downforce setup, which usually you run on the road courses. So that car had quite a familiar feeling to it, but of course, he set it for the oval. It's a unique challenge. And so far, he's not exactly making inroads on Team Doyle. In fact, Doyle's actually starting to pull away bit by bit. And actually, Eric Davis is keeping with him, just to keep him honest by about a few tenths of a second. So it seems as though that it was a great start from Michael, but how he settles in from this point in is going to be crucial as to where he ends up by the time we get to the checkered flag.
Of course, IndyCar hasn't run at Richmond International Raceway since 2009. That's how long it's been. And the last time they ran there, it was under the lights in the race that Dario Franchitti won in his Talking Chip Ganassi machine. Now, Tim Doyle has got himself a 1.4 second lead over Michael Dinkel. Dinkel himself has a 0.5 second lead over Eric Davis, who runs currently in the third position in that band. We got a car who's very slow right now, actually, who is on the apron. I've got a feeling, I'm just going to get confirmation of that car is Nigel Kirkin. He spins his car around on pit road exit, but he is going to be out of the race, scored one lap down in the 24th position, and his job is done for the time being. However, everyone else is still under green flag conditions right now, and it is Tim Doyle leading from Dinkel, from Davis, from McBride, from Kingsbury. They are your top 5 right now. Still 23 drivers scored on the lead lap. Pretty much everyone who started this race, with the exception of Nigel Kirkin and Christian Manson, are scored on the lead lap. But Richmond in itself, you have to say, Jake, is arguably one of the most difficult courses, not only on those first 5 laps, but also when those tyres start letting out and you get into a 20-30 green lap run.
Yeah, when these drivers get down into that 20-30 green flag run, as you say, they're going to be thinking a lot more about the way the car's handling, because that weight jacker is going to play a big effect. We mentioned it at the Indy 500 last week. We said that the weight jacker, their drivers are going to have to try it in the DWs. Well, we actually have our first caution out now, Will.
Yeah, we do. Our first caution of the day here at Richmond International Raceway. We'll get confirmation of who that is in just one moment's time. Car number 9 is the one involved in that, and that is Jim McClure from Indiana. Of course, he is a member of Panther Offline Racing, and now Jim's had a bit of a difficult season in the ISOWC. He runs a part-time schedule as it is. We'll just get a replay of that up on your screens in just one moment's time. He came through turn number 4, and it seems to be he had an incident there with Michael Armstrong in the 14 car. Those two cars came together, and McClure hitting his rear wing into the safer barrier. Nigel Manifa also involved in that as a secondary impact, but it does seem to be that there's not going to be too much damage that any of those race cars got.
Now, it looks as though that obviously McClure got away from that pretty easy. I'm just trying to cycle through and look at that incident myself, but it did seem as though it seems to have been the Indy God seems to be smiling on him for the moment at least, but he was very lucky to get away with that after that incident. Just trying to scroll through to see, I still haven't seen it just yet, so waiting for it to come through. But yeah, all 3 of those guys, lucky that it isn't into their race, but yeah, just watching it. I have to say that McClure was the innocent party in that one, because he had the guy up on the inside. Of course, there was contact that put him into the wall, and lucky that Manifa, of course, didn't get to sustain any damage more than he did. But it's going to be intriguing to see if anyone decides to make an early pit stop now to decide whether or not it's time to possibly get in an early stop in to try and gain advantages later on. But that means that those guys who do stop under yellow will mean that they will start to they'll be in a different strategy. They'll be out of sync with the rest of the field. So I don't think, possibly thinking about it maybe at this early stage, maybe anyone will, but it depends. It depends on anyone who wants to get a jump and get fresh tyres already, or fill up a little bit more fuel than they had at the start, and then take an advantage going forward so they can run longer whilst everyone else is pitting under green.
Yes, Xavier Bora comes onto pit road, but he has scored right now 1 lap down, and this race 3 years ago actually was a very difficult one for Tim Doyle. He came into pit road with just 15 laps to go. He had to top up with race fuel, and that cost him a shot of the win back in the 2011 ISOWC Richmond 250. So Tim Doyle right now leading this race, Jake, but he knows all too well how important strategy can be at this racetrack.
If anyone, Tim Doyle, yeah, not just at this racetrack, any racetrack Tim races at, he always thinks about that strategy long and hard, and him on his own, he's going to have to outplay them Vortex guys. Obviously, Michael Dinkle and Dennis Garis will be working together. They also have other teammates on the track, so they're going to have to really work together, and Tim's obviously got his team behind him as well that are going to help him out and play that strategy as well into his hands, and hopefully he doesn't make that mistake again and lose the race win, because, you know, Tim Doyle, what he does and how he drives is incredible, because he is probably one of the quickest drivers in the series. So it's very interesting to see what strategy these drivers will take, as none of them actually came down pit road on the first caution.
Yeah, and Jim McClure is out of the race. You see the lights are still on top of the pace car, and it doesn't seem to be that Jim's a very happy guy right now, Scott.
No, he's certainly being very vocal about what happened there in the incident, and obviously he's stating that obviously the driver up the inside he was up the inside of him. He gave him enough room, but obviously according to that driver, he feels it obviously he didn't think it was enough. And yeah, certainly that can be heat of the moment, of course. When the adrenaline's pumping, when you just come out of an incident, you can say things in the heat of the moment, of course. And obviously, when you look back at it and think, maybe I shouldn't have said that, but it does happen with drivers from time to time with certain incidents. But I'm sure James will look back at it and possibly either talk to the other driver in question about it amicably and maybe do so, maybe not. Depends on how James wants to really take it upon himself to deal with it outside of this race. But we'll have to see. It is unfortunate that James is out, that James is having some problems now, but hopefully he can bounce back. And yeah, that was certainly unfortunate for James, who is unfortunately now out of the race. So he'll have to try and come back another day and carry on fighting.
Yeah, that number 9 Panther offline racing car, the effing hippie as he's known, normally a really calm and cool character, however seems to be a little bit upset here today. Pace car down onto pit road. Tim Doyle brings up the pace. Green flag back in the air here at Richmond International Raceway. The guys getting back to green flag racing. Got a car down on the apron. That is Arthur Hermot there, who is just allowing all of these cars on the lead lap to try and get past him. But that actually, you have to say, Jake, was a pretty scary moment for all of these cars as Herbert got down onto the apron.
Yeah, it really is scary when you see a car just make a dive to the apron. You don't know whether he's out of control on the start, and you need to check up in case he comes back across. But very sensible from him to get out of the way of the lead lap drivers. He'll now go a lap down, so very unfortunate for him. But looking at the front, a really good start again from Tim Doyle. He knows how to make the restarts work in these IndyCars. He is a master of the restarts, as we've just seen for the start of the race. And on the first restart, Michael Dinkle already 1.5 seconds behind Tim Doyle, so he's got a lot of ground to make up. But a really good start from Matt Kingsbury, though. He's come all the way from P8 on the grid, making 4 positions up. So he's really making a charge with that last lap motorsports car. Gary Borkenhagen also coming forward through the grid. But Niall McBride really dropping down now. He started in that P4 position, and he's lost 4 positions back into P8, Will.
Yes, both Matt Kingsbury there in the last lap motorsports car, the number 21 machine moving up in this field. Also, Gary Borkenhagen in the Broken Arrow car is moving up in the early going. However, as you said, Niall McBride there, who started this race in that number 41 last lap motorsports car, has dropped himself down 4 positions. He right now runs in the 8th position on the racetrack. We currently have 20 cars scored on the lead lap right now, and the last one of those drivers is Michel Dejean. However, there's good battling going on all the way through the field. Now, this track is pretty much a single groove for the majority of it, Jake. However, if you can get on the outside of drivers, actually the outside can be a better place to pass here than the inside if you got a car that handles in the long going.
Yeah, if you can get that draft on the exit of turn number 4, you can really pass them on the outside down the home straight and into 1. But also that home straight's a good place to go to the inside as well, because it does force drivers on the outside going into turn 1 to the top, because they can't hold their line, and the car is just not possible to hold that low down when you're too wide. So there is some very good passes to place, and as you said, Will, the outside is a very, very strong, as we just watched Nigel Manif pass Scott Smith there. He does it up the inside, so drivers are going to have to choose their way, and they're going to have to pick their spots, because they're not going to get many chances to pass around this track, because it's a track of very few passes.
It really is indeed, and that single groove nature, Scott, we talked about it earlier on, how important strategy can be. Strategy at this racetrack has historically dictated the race. We'll go back to the 2011 ISOWC race here. Tim Doyle losing out for strategy late on in the going. Also in 2009 in the iRacing Series, what happened was, in the IndyCar Series even, you know, it was a point where a number of drivers are pinned a lap down. Now, if you pit here under green, then you lose yourself 2 laps on the racetrack, and you do not want to pit under green until you absolutely have to.
Well, of course, that's the reason why some drivers will cause hope, obviously not purposely, but they'll hope possibly that a couple of cautions will come into play in order to try and help them out, possibly try and get those laps back. It's certainly a tricky situation for some drivers to find themselves in. It's that crucial kind of, you have to have a smart head on you in terms of when you feel it's the right time to be starting to save fuel, and it's those clever drivers that can save fuel but not lose too much of their pace, especially on a circuit as short as this here at Richmond, that can really capitalise on that and start making up places or maintain the position they have in the field. So whether or not guys like Tim Doyle, of course, has learnt from their mistakes, of course, we said he's one of the best in the races of the IndyCar and iRacing in the series. So obviously he's got vast experience of being able to push when he needs to and to pull back and save when he needs to, but to maintain the gap that he has and the advantage he has in the lead. We'll have to wait and see exactly how Michael Dinkel plays in that one, because of course all we've seen him of is mainly on the road course and seeing how much his strategy has played out to and how good he is at that, being able to pull away from the field. But at this point he hasn't got it all his own way, but we'll have to wait and see what some of these guys also in the middle of the field are going to be able to do in terms of how they save their fuel and how they get on with it, as I see that Gary Borkinen going past one of the slower cars on the outside of the circuit and almost getting caught up on his lap traffic as well. But yeah, this is going to be intriguing for strategy, and I have a feeling that if not an outright pace, as you said, strategy is certainly going to play a massive factor in determining the outcome as to who takes victory here today.
Xavier Bora in that number 22 car is having a difficult day, now scored 2 laps down, being passed both there by Matt Kingsbury and Gary Borkenhagen. Now, it seems to be that this field is a little bit spread out for the majority of it, but Michael Dinkel, Eric Davis, they are very close together as Davis goes past Dinkel on that last lap in the battle for his second position, and it was a good pass, but a very close pass there, Jake, by Davis over Dinkel, and Dinkel looking as though he's going to respond here. He's looking to the outside down into turn 1, not quite close enough to make that pass.
Yeah, Davis there having a lot of help though from the back marking cars. Michael Dinkel actually had to make it 3 wide on the exit of turn number 2, and then someone actually got into the wall, and that allowed Dinkel made Dinkel slow up really and check up, so he didn't come back down on the racetrack. And then Eric Davis actually did take it 4 wide and went to the inside, and he got through. So then back markers playing a big disadvantage there for the top 5. Matt Kingsbury and Gary Borkenhagen also got caught up in that trouble. So it was very interesting to see then bike markers not really getting out of the way for the lead lap drivers, which is something we normally do see around this track, but it's very hard to pass wherever they are, even if they are a lap down.
Indeed so, and Davis now has a couple of 10-second lead over Michael Dinkel. However, Tim Doyle himself now has a 3-second lead over the field, and Tim Doyle is one of these drivers who has historically been incredibly good. And our second caution of the day here at the ISOWC Richmond 250, and we're getting word that it potentially could be Michel De Jong who is out of the race.
It's Paul Jennings, in fact, 74.
Yeah, the 74 car of Paul Jennings also now out of the race as well. We'll get ourselves a replay of that up on your screen in just one moment's time. However, Paul Jennings, he got himself, it just seems to be actually a little bit tight up the centre of turn number 2 there, and that's what put him out of the race. And you would say in some ways it's a bit of a weird move there for Jennings, but at the same time, these cars often do get tight out of corner number 2, Jake, and it seems to be that for Jennings, he works himself out of corner number 2, got himself tight, hit the wall, and his day is done.
Yeah, generally that is just a bit of unfortunate. That could be a bit of setup issues, or maybe not running the right weight jacker. Sorry, he may have had it a little too high or a little too low, and that's just caused the car to be a little too tight. And you know, when that happens, the car just doesn't want to go down the racetrack. It just wants to go one place, and that is to the wall. And that looks like what happened to Paul Jennings. I don't know if Michael De Jong actually got caught up in that, but he's also classified as out of this race.
Pit road was open then. You saw Tim Doyle came onto pit road first. He came out of pit road first as well. Eric Davis came out in the second place, and Dinkel was the third guy out of pit road. Then Kingsbury, then Borkenhagen, then Gareese, then Armstrong, then Grosser, McBride, Cam Stark, and Dave Jinks. And 45 laps into this race already. These laps tick off very quickly here, Scott. A lap time here on average, you're looking at something in the 15-second range, and you know, entire pit sequence is only about 80 laps. So halfway through our first fuel run, most of our top drivers onto pit road.
That means that obviously the top half of the field, of course, in terms of the front-running drivers, are going to be out of sync with the second half. But one driver that didn't pit, interesting enough, was Nigel Monteith, and he's now going to be staying out. He was running as low as roughly around 6th or 7th place, but he's managed to jump up, so he's decided to to roll the dice and decide that he's not exactly going to pit this time by. I wonder if possibly this time, because I think several other drivers have decided to make their pit stops, obviously to get out of sequence, and that can be the case sometimes, where some drivers don't decide to pit on the first time by because they want to get out of the rush and actually pit when it's a little more clear in pit lanes. There's less of a risk of accidents. That's exactly what most of the field have done. But for a few drivers, including Monteith himself, he decides he wants to again roll the dice, give it a bit of a gamble, and see exactly how long he can run before he makes his stop. But of course, it does mean, as we said, if there is no caution for the next, obviously, 40 odd laps or so, it does mean of course that he will have to possibly make his first stop under green flag conditions. That means he will start dropping down the couple of laps that we mentioned, and that could potentially put him out of the running for something like a top 10. We said it's crucial that strategy can decide this race. And I have a feeling that if Mike doesn't get lucky with another caution, his race might not go as sweetly as he'd hoped.
Indeed so, and you've got to pay attention now to Nigel Monteith, because not only is he going to be on old tyres, but he's also going to have a lot less fuel than those guys ahead of him. And Jake, we know that the lower your fuel load is, the easier it is to pull away on a green flag run. For Monteith, he's rolling the dice right now. He's had some interesting performances on the road course, some good races, some bad races. He's hoping right now, by getting himself some good points, he'll get himself set up as we head over out of the month of May, into June, and into another long run of oval races here in the ISOWC IndyCar Series.
Yeah, that lighter fuel road really will make a big difference for his starts, but he has Tim Doyle behind him, so that is going to play a big effect as well, because Tim Doyle will never be left behind at a start by anyone. He's always on the ball. But as you say, Nigel Monteith has actually had some really good performances, but then not some as good performances if we look back to Barber Motorsports Park, where he was leading the race from Michael Dinkle, and then he just got it all wrong, and that was the end of his race when he came out of pit road and he hit the wall. As we're about to go green flag racing again.
Yeah, pace car going to make that journey down onto pit road once again. It's going to be Nigel Monteith leading the field here in the 069 car. Tim Doyle behind him. Green flag back in the air here at Richmond International Raceway. The cars all come back down into turn number 1. Once again, Monteith leading from Tim Doyle. Eric Davis in line. Michael Dinkle in line in that 4th place, but he's going side by side right now with Matt Kingsbury. Kingsbury to the inside, and Kingsbury is going to get that job done out of corner number 4 there, Scott.
Yeah, that was another very decent, of course, going forwards, but
oh, trouble! Eric Davis put it into the wall there, down in turn number 1. That might bring the caution back out once again, and this was down into turn number 1. Matt Kingsbury all the way down to the inside. Eric Davis, I think they didn't realise that Matt Kingsbury was there, and Kingsbury is out of the race. No, Kingsbury's still in the race. Eric Davis is out of the race, and that there was a big move, because Eric Davis was one of the hot favourites coming into this event, Jake.
Yeah, a real hot favourite there, has just been taken out of this race. He qualified in 2nd position, and he's been very strong so far, but Matt Kingsbury just looked up the inside there. He had the big run on the home straight, though. He had that run from obviously Michael Dinkle and from Eric Davis, but Kingsbury was, to me, that did look like a fair move. He did look to the inside, and he showed himself there. He was 3/4 of the way up the inside of Eric Davis, so I do really say Davis did close the gap on Kingsbury.
Yeah, we'll get ourselves a replay of that up on your screens momentarily, and this was working on to lap number 50. Now, Kingsbury came down to the inside. He did have the inside coming down into the corner. Now, Kingsbury's running all the way down to the yellow line, but he did actually show his car down to the inside. Eric Davis in that Fancy Autosport number 65 car, he just seemed to be as if he always crowded Kingsbury a little bit. I'm not quite sure if he realised that Kingsbury's down to the inside or not, but he is now classified as out of the race. And one of the big contenders is now classified as out. Of course, it'll be interesting to see now what happens to Nigel Monteith, whether he comes to the pit road this time by, risk going down to the rear of the field because there are still 16 cars scored on the lead lap, or, as it seems to be, whether he will stay out on the lead lap right now and hope that we'll get a caution in about 40 laps time, which will put him back into sequence. But Eric Davis is classified as out of the race right now, and that was a move there with him and the LLM driver of Matt Kingsbury in what was the battle for the 2nd position on the racetrack. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow we have got ourselves Neo GT racing taking place from Silverstone. Join all of our gang here on RaceSpotTV as we bring you 2.5 hours of GT racing with the BMWs, the Roughs, and also the McLaren MB4 GT3 car here on RaceSpotTV with a special onboard screen by the guy known simply as Empty Box. And at the same time, Tim Dole is coming down onto pit road right now, Scott.
It was quite unusual. I saw him through turn 2. He did actually nudge the wall on the apron through turn 2 and then came back onto the racetrack. So I'm not entirely sure what the strategy is with Tim, whether he's going for another fill-up, another set of tyres. It's quite perplexing. I had no idea why he's come back into pit road. He seems to be the only person, as far as I can see, that's doing so. So this is a really strange move. So I'll pulse this to Tim Dole, and the man who was leading for so long. Now is this a further technical problem? Has he suffered any more problems with tyres? I can't fathom this one. I'm completely lost with this one. I'm not really sure why Tim Dole, either that's a problem or he's forgotten something on the pit stop. Either way, he's dropped to the back of the field, even under yellow flag conditions.
Meanwhile, you see the cars have still got their lights on, and the lights are still on the pace car. That means we're not going to go back to green flag racing this time by. However, Tim Dole, it's a long pit stop for him, and potentially now he does have some damage there, Jake. As we're getting a little bit of word there from the 11 cars, he comes out of pit road once again.
Yeah, he may have caught a bit of damage, but he may just want to drop to the back of the field after seeing what he's just seen in his mirrors, you know. It's not always something you want to see in your mirrors when you see a quick driver like Eric Davis get taken out like that racing instant. But actually, no, Tim Dole's going to come back down pit road. So here, I think he's going to have damage, actually, Will, and he's going to get that repaired again and see how much of that he can get repaired. So our Pulsar is really starting to struggle now with that damage.
So yeah, he comes back onto pit road, as you say there. Nigel Maneve still leads the race right now, and the lights are off on the pace car. In fact, actually, the pace car is working itself through turn number 3 right now. Tim Dole is only just actually getting into his pit stall, so Tim Dole is going to go laps down here in this event, because that pace car now comes back in. Green flag racing about to get back in the air here at Richmond International Raceway as Maneve picks up the pace behind him. Matt Kingsbury in the 2nd position, Michael Dinkle in 3rd. Then it's Michael Armstrong in the 4th position right now. Single file as they all come down out of turn 1. But Kingsbury trying to make a move down to the inside there of Nigel Maneve. He'll get that pass complete in that number 21 car. And we're going to have another lead change as Kingsbury goes to the point now, Scott.
Yeah, and also there goes Michael Dinkle into 2nd place. It looks like Maneve's fact to stay out is kind of backfiring already. And Michael Armstrong looks as though he wants to make a pass up to 3rd position, as now Maneve is being surrounded by cars all around him. But here comes Maneve trying to get on the comeback, trying to get past Dinkle once again on the strike through turns 1 and 2. So it seems the way that Matt Kingsbury got a fantastic start to take the lead early on, but Dinkle seems to be in 2nd place and isn't really pulling away. And now also Maneve will go look at the background, because here goes Michael Armstrong, and these top 4 already starting to pull away from the pack, which is being led by Danska Racing 5th. So these 4 starting to break away and possibly setting the pace early on as we get back under green.
Yeah, our top 4 drivers separated by 6/10 of a second right now. However, then it's a 0.8 of a second gap then to Dennis Grease, who right now runs in that 5th position. But Dinkle is very close right now to the rear of Matt Kingsbury as they come and down into turn 1 once again. Dinkle not quite close enough this time by. However, he's got himself a good run, some good momentum in that battle for the race lead. Of course, Kingsbury is our 3rd different leader of the day after Tim Dole and Nigel Maneve. This time by, Dinkle goes down to the inside, and will he get that pass time down in turn 1? The answer is going to be he will have the line, he will get that pass complete. Dinkle to the point there, coming out of turn number 2, Jake.
Really great pass there by Dinkle. You saw that inside line, what I was talking about earlier on, Will. If you get that toe on the exit, Kingsbury's in the hole! Kingsbury is round!
That was
big mistake.
Corner number 4 there, and the lights are not on the pace car. Kingsbury's out of the race. We stay green, I believe, for the time being. And Matt Kingsbury in that number 21 car is out of the race, and that is actually a huge moment there. Now, just try to have a look at ourselves at the replay. We'll get one up on your screen in just one moment's time. He came out of corner number 4, got himself loose. He actually tagged Nigel Maneve a little bit there, but Matt Kingsbury out of the race. He seems to be that dirty air. Did not work for him at all there, Scott.
It just seems to be something's happening with, of course, our front runners, because nothing is going right for any of them apart from Michael Dinkle. We've had Davis being taken up by Kingsbury, Kingsbury then going out himself with a mistake, and now, of course, we've had our man Tim Dole, who's having to come back to the field now in 16th. Pushing through, so something is going up with our front runners, but so far it's all falling into the plum seat for Michael Dinkle. He's leading course, but now Nigel Maneve is doing a fantastic job, but he was so lucky not to get collected in that instant, because as you said, there was a tag on one East right rear. He could have possibly, so easy could have been included in that incident, but somehow a higher power smiling on one East there, because he is up in second place, yet to make a pit stop, but certainly putting Dinkle under pressure as they come back onto lap 67, coming up towards lap traffic. But so unfortunate for Matt Kingsbury. He was doing so well getting up there with a fantastic restart, and now it has all gone to pieces.
Christian Manson is going to come onto pit road this time by Jake. Carry on.
I've just been told actually that Matt Kingsbury was out of fuel, and his spotter had actually not put the fuel in when he came down pit road, so whether that played a part into his crash there, running obviously the wrong weight jacker maybe, and that put him into the wall, but he did not have any fuel left apparently.
Well, that is going to be an important part, because let's not forget, these cars change their balance completely over a course of a green flag run. Now, these drivers do have the anti-roll bars, both front and rear, and the weight checker, which they can use on the oval courses. But if you're actually thinking that your car is going to handle in a certain way with a certain amount of fuel, and then all of a sudden your car's got a different amount of fuel in that you're not aware about, that's going to have a big impact about the balance of the race car on this racetrack, and potentially that was a contributing factor there for Kingsbury in that 21 car, Jake.
Yeah, it really was. As we look onto the track, where Dave Jinks just got into the wall on the exit of turn number 2. That looked like what Matt Kingsbury did as well, and some of the earlier drivers that took an exit from the race, their cars just got tight and he's hit the wall. But yeah, really big factor, as you say, Will. The fuel load does play a big advantage when it's a high fuel load. You obviously run less weight jackers because you've got the force of that, but as the fuel starts going down, you start cranking that weight jacker up and up and up, and yeah, it just changes the perspective of the car big time.
Tim Doyle right now has scored 1 lap down in that 13th position. You've also got Tim Miller scored 1 lap down right now in the 14th spot. After Hermot is scored 2 laps down right now in the 15th position, as Azio Bora is trying to work his way back through the field. Dave Jinks is classified as out of the race, as is Renan Lopez, Matt Kingsbury, Eric Davies, Paul Jennings, Michelle De Jong, Christian Manson, Jim McClure, and Martin Nakel-Kirken right now. But that battle out front, Michael Dinkle is now being able to pull out about a 6-7 tenths of a second lead over Nigel Maneve. And you've got to remember as well that the tyre wear on these cars, Maneve is on old tyres. He has not yet pitted under a long period of running, Scott, but Dinkle on fresh tyres is really putting a gap up right now.
Yeah, it seems to be that even though on a lighter fuel load, it's not doing Maneve any favours whatsoever. He is kept holding a steady pace to try and keep in touch. But of course, remember, he's going to come under attack pretty soon from the likes of Michael Armstrong, Dennis Carisi, and Gary Borkenhagen if he's not too careful. And as the leaders are now starting to work their way through even more traffic, Dinkle's starting to just pull that gap away, and he is lapping roughly around just slightly quicker. I mean, Maneve is doing well enough to keep pace at the moment, but of course we've got to wait until we get to the end of the stint, which we are getting towards. Of course, a couple of green flag, yellow flag periods have. In fact, as I say, that yellow flag comes out again. So this may help Maneve in terms of fuel strategy, but this is incredible. Another yellow flag, and one this time is going to be, as we see, one of the cars is smoking on the infield. That's possibly the culprit, but I can't quite see who it is.
Number 34 car, we believe, is the driver involved on that. We'll get ourselves a replay up on your screen, and of course, number 34 machine is in this race here today. We actually haven't got a number 34 car.
Number 24, sorry,
24 car. Cam Stark in from the UK and I, representing LLM, and we'll get ourselves a replay of that up on your screen in just 1 moment's time. Coming down into corner number 1 and 2. Let's see what happened. Oh, actually, it was there in the centre of turn number 3 and 4, actually, Jake. He just got himself loose in the centre of the corner. Very easy thing to have happen to him, and he just seemed to be, he came down into the corner, running behind traffic, caught the yellow line there, and that's what spun him out of the groove into the wall, and thankfully he didn't hit anyone else in the process there.
Yeah, something you never want to do around here at Richmond is go below the yellow line. As soon as you go below there, it just really takes your car and it turns it into a whole new dimension, the way the car will handle, and it just loses the traction and you'll go up high into the wall. Yeah, lucky, very lucky actually, Will. No one was on his outside, because that could have taken them with him, and then that could have caused the big one, what we don't want to see. But that's another Last Lap Motorsports car out of the runnings, Will, so that's definitely going to dampen their spirits in the team camp.
Indeed so, and they have had a difficult season so far in this series, where they've had difficulties at the start of races. Remember back to Long Beach, for example, we had a couple of the drivers out in the early going, but let's not forget that this is a long season. This is only round number 6 of 16, and in 1 week's time we head over to Texas Motor Speedway for the 7th round of the 2014 ISOWC IndyCar Series, and these drivers will be hoping once they go back to an intermediate oval, they will have the opportunity to shine under the light of Texas Motor Speedway. That will be in 1 week's time here, exclusively live on RaceSpotTV. But right now it is Michael Dinkel leading from Nigel Maneve, and Michael Armstrong in the 3rd position, Derek Gareis in the 4th position, and then it's Gary Borkenhagen who rounds out your top 5. Robert Grosser, Noah Bride, Tim Isinyemi, Terry Mattinson, and Scott Smith round out your top 10 right now, Scott. But we had 3 cautions. We've got 80 laps of this race scored complete. We haven't seen any incidents on restart per se, but it seems to be that it's driver mistake that's causing the issues here more than car failures.
And that's quite surprising because, of course, you would have thought they'd be coming later on in the race when drivers are starting to get a little bit tired, the fatigues and start to go in, concentration levels will go down. So it's quite surprising that we're getting most of them earlier on. That may be just the fact that some drivers get a little bit too over-enthusiastic, a little bit crossed up, a little bit excited because of the restarts. And sometimes drivers can get a little bit frustrated because it's stop-start periods of these cautions. They're kind of having to run at racing speeds, then back down behind the safety car, and the pace car, and then back and forth, back and forth. You know, it's kind of peaks and troughs with their speeds, and that can sometimes get them a bit frustrated, especially when you're trying to keep to a decent pit strategy and not be out of sync, and trying to avoid as many inconvenient green flag pit stops as possible. I've got somebody coming down onto pit road, one of the laps cars. I can't quite see who exactly that is, but maybe we can fill that one in. But what's quite incredible is that we're down to 81 laps, and you said that the pit window will roughly be about 80 laps. Of course, we said that this pace laps would be helping Nigel Maneve with his tyre wear and his fuel load, but suddenly it's gone past 80 laps right now, and Maneve is still staying at this. He still feels pretty confident in how that car feels, but I wonder, of course, the big question is, it's not if, it's when he has to bring that number 069 car onto pit road to make his first pit stop, and just how far it's going to pull him back down the order.
It was Tim Miller there in that number 91 car that came onto pit road. So Tim Miller now is scored 2 laps down in this event. Of course, you've got to pay attention to that number 11 car of Tim Doyle. And single file restarts as well. It's going to be interesting to see if he can come back through the field. The lights are off on the pace car. Going back to green flag racing this time by. It's going to be Michael Dinkel in the 10 car as that pace car comes in. Bring the field back to green flag racing here. Richmond International Raceway, and a really slow start there by Maneve, and Michael Armstrong all over the race. Going to go down to the inside, down to turn number 1, and he will get that pass complete, Jake.
Yeah, really great start there from Michael Dinkel, again leaving Nigel Maneve in his dust. Maneve not had the strongest of restarts at Richmond so far, but Michael Armstrong, another good starter. He makes starts like Tim Doyle, and we made that see, and he made that count there, and he's now moved up into the P2 position. Next guy looking to be all over the back of Nigel Maneve, though, is Dennis Gareis. He's not going to be wanting to sit long behind him. He's going to want to try and get by and help his teammate Michael Dinkel lead the way. Obviously, them Vortex guys are really going to have to play this into their own hands now. Gary Borkenhagen still sits in the 5th position. Niall McBride coming back through the field, though. He dropped back all the way back to P10 after the first round of pit stops, now back up into P6.
And Tim Doyle as well. He was able to get himself now in 6th in line. He has still scored 1 lap down the racetrack in the 12th position, but he's now 6th in line. The way the restart procedures work and the way that the single file restarts work is that drivers scored laps down will not be moved to the rear of the field. So for Tim Doyle, he has the opportunity to make that lap back in that number 11 Point Wines Machine's car as they all come back down out of turn number 2 down into turn number 3 once again. But it's Dinkel leading now from Armstrong in the 2nd position. A 1 second gap between Dinkel and Armstrong. Maneve in the 3rd position, Gareis in 4th, and Gary Borkenhagen in the 5th position right now. So to put that into perspective, it is a Vortex racing car leading from an LLM car. Then you got Maneve in the 3rd position, then another Vortex car in the 4th position, and then Broken Arrow, their highest placed car right now, is in the 5th spot. But you have got to keep your eye out on Tim Doyle right now, Scott, because he's 6th in line and he is charging, closing up to the rear of Gary Borkenhagen, who runs in the 5th position on the lead lap.
Absolutely, he's running pace faster than leader Michael Dinkel, of course, so he's going to try and get himself past these guys as quickly as he can. But of course, he knows effectively he is kind of like an anomaly with these guys around him, because he's trying to make up ground on Williams, of course, and get a lap back. These guys are racing position, So these guys aren't exactly going to be welcoming to getting through. He's going to have to try and get around the hard way, and it exactly won't be shown the door as he probably would have been, and it's not going to be all easy picking as he may have found in the lead just at the beginning of the race. So Doyle's going to have his work cut out to get around these guys. They're running on similar, if not exactly the same pace as he is, so this is going to be effort rather than just simply sailing by. So he's had it all fairly simple getting past guys around him, of course, and on restarts he's been absolutely sensational. But let's be honest, the guy likes Borgenhagen and Grease, they're in their own battle, so they're not exactly going to open the door for them too easy going forwards. But the quicker that Doyle can get around them, if he can, the quicker he can get that lap back and start charging back towards the front. How far he can get, of course, as we're already on lap 92, remains to be seen.
Indeed so, and you see there that Tim Doyle is actually not really putting too much pressure on Gary Borgenhagen ahead of him, mainly because of the fact that Borgenhagen and Dennis Grease are battling right now for the 4th position on the racetrack. Borgenhagen looking down to the inside, not going to be quite close, but he's going to actually go down to the inside, and he will get that pass. Oh, Grease getting sideways there and touching the wall there out of corner number 2, and that allows Tim Doyle to go past him. But that was a scary moment there for Gary Borgenhagen and that 18 broken arrow machine, and also Tim Doyle in that 1140 twine car as the number 16 Vortex racing car of Dennis Grease goes into the wall. But it does look as though he's okay to carry on, Jake, but it does look as though he's a little bit off pace right now.
Yeah, his car looks fine to continue on, but he's just now been passed by Niall McBride as well. So Niall McBride really over his back tail off as well after that incident. But Dennis Grease is going to look back to the inside, and he's going to hold that back. He's not going to let Niall by without a challenge, but Niall's got the run there on the outside, and he's managed to hold that position now on the exit of 4. Dennis Grease may have a bit of suspension damage after a light wall touch. These Indy cars, not one of the strongest cars on the iRacing service, so they're very easy to damage, and that little bit of suspension damage or the aero damage can make a big difference, maybe a 10th or 2. It can drop you off the pace, so very unfortunate for Dennis Grease, because him and his teammate Michael Dinkel, both the Vortex Racing cars, were having a very strong showing at Richmond.
Christian Manson has brought his car onto pit road, scoring multiple laps down right now, but he's just trying to get some repairs sorted out to his race car. We've also got one of the Kingsburys, I believe that is Matt Kingsbury, who's brought his car back onto pit road from the garage area, hoping to get himself back into the race here, but he has scored multiple laps down, just hoping to run for point in this event here today. Dingle right now leads by about 1.6 seconds over Michael Armstrong. In fact, that last time by though, Armstrong was a little bit faster than Michael Dinkel's got, and this is going to be an interesting battle as we get ourselves another long green flag period.
Yeah, and of course the intriguing thing is now is going to be exactly how much more life that Nigel Maneev has in those tyres, and that's exactly the reason why he hasn't been so fantastic on restarts. The warm rubber that he has on that car is now done 100 laps without making a pit stop, so it's just incredible just how long he's been able to make that go. But as we said, the caution periods are certainly playing to Maneev's favour to go longer, but of course now he's getting to the territory where he has to start thinking about exactly when can he afford to make a pit stop. Obviously under green flag conditions, this is going to put him down a couple of laps if he pits in the next few laps, of course. Now he's probably going to be hoping at this point for another caution sometime soon to try and take advantage of that, because some guys like Dinkel, like Armstrong, Borgenhagen, McBride, they possibly going to be thinking about making their second caution stop, second stop. And if he can do it under caution the same as the leaders can, he can start getting himself in there. So this could be possibly some smart strategy playing here for Nigel Maneev, but it all depends exactly how long this green flag period is until we get another caution period, and if so, just how much he can manage those tyres. So for the moment, he's running a decent pace and keeping with Armstrong at the front, but all eyes will be on him to see exactly how long he can go before he's forced to make a trip down pit road.
You want an entertaining take on everything that happens in the world of motorsports? Then check out the Will and Dave Show. It's every Saturday, 6:30 PM Eastern Time, here on Glacier TV and RaceSpotTV, as we recap everything that happens in IndyCar, NASCAR, Formula 1 and everything in between. That's the Will and Dave Show, 6:30 PM Eastern Time, only on Glacier TV and RaceSpotTV. Right now, Dinkel's got himself a 1.8 second advantage over Armstrong. Armstrong struggled under traffic there to get the job done. That gap this time by, it actually goes up by another 10th of a second, so Dinkel is really putting out that advantage. And for Michael Dinkel right now, Jake, he was absolutely dominant on the 4 road courses we had in a row. One of our big questions was, would he be able to actually translate that performance from the road courses onto the ovals? And right now, you have to say 40 minutes into this event, he is doing just that.
Yeah, we did question it actually a lot, where we were saying at the end of the races we got the ovals to come, and to win the championship, the overall championship, you've got to be consistent on both platforms, the oval and the roadside, and he is actually showing he is very consistent on oval as well. Some of the oval drivers may say it is easier to drive oval than road, but you've still got to have a lot of skill to drive it quickly and drive it fast and consistently, as Michael Dinkel is, and that is what he's showing us right now. He's beating the likes of Michael Armstrong, you know, Niall McBride as well, Robert Grosser. They're all the open oval guys that race the series week in, week out at all the top oval tracks, and he's beating them all, so you got to take your hats off to Michael Dinkel.
Meanwhile, Tim Doyle has been able to move himself up a couple of other positions on the racetrack. He scored, to say, still 12th position. The first car scored 1 lap down, but he's now about 4th in line on the racetrack, Scott. And to have a look at Tim Doyle's progress, he's really had some great strides since the drop of the green flag of this time by. He's hoping that he can get himself into a position where, if the caution comes out now, he can get himself his lap back and then be kind of on pace with the leaders.
But the intriguing thing is, now he's in clear 8, he's not exactly making too many great strides. Now he's got himself around the likes of Niall McBride and Gary Borkenhagen and Dennis Carisse, who himself, actually, Dennis Carisse, I'm not sure we mentioned it, has actually dropped back down to 9th position. So he's actually dropped back down, obviously not running exactly a fantastic pace at this point in the event. But Tim Doyle exactly is at least trying to keep as much pace as he can with the leaders. And as you said, I think a caution would certainly benefit him roughly around now, because as you said, he can get the lap back, possibly even pit under, and of course I think he's confident as he's now made a pit stop. Of course he is slightly out of sync with everyone else, which means he could probably go a little bit longer and possibly try and employ a similar strategy that Nigel Munif is running at the moment, and try and run it, because he knows he has the pace in that car. He wouldn't have taken pole position and led in at stages if he hadn't. And now he's really pushing on to try and see exactly how far he can get up before he has to make another pit stop. So I think really a caution period would benefit not only Tim Doyle, as we said, but also Nigel Munif, because they can start taking advantage of that straight away and try and benefit from the guys who have to pit in that sequence, like Michael Dinkel and Michael Armstrong and Gary Borkenhagen, and possibly that we could see him back up into the top 10 within the next few laps by the end of that caution period and the end of this green flag stint, if there is another caution in between.
Scott Smith and Dusan Baldwin are now scored 1 lap down on the racetrack. The number 30 car there are Scott Smith. He's had a bit of an interesting day right now. He's running very high to the wall at the corner number 4. But Dusan Baldwin also is now scored 1 lap down. In fact, he's going to get past there by the number 14 car of Michael Armstrong to put him a lap down as well. But it's Dinkel out front who is leading now by 2.1 seconds over Michael Armstrong, and Nigel Munif as well. He's dropped back to about 6/10 of a second behind Armstrong, so single file racing for the time being. Our closest battle actually is between Niall McBride in the 5th position, Jake, and Terry Mattinson, who right now is running in the 6th position on the racetrack. That last time by, these two drivers are very, very closely matched.
Yeah, very good lap times by both of these drivers. Terry Mattinson, a very consistent driver, but they're both running them low 16s, which is a real big pace. But on that last lap through, Niall McBride doing a 16.2 and Terry Mattinson doing a 16.1, slight as a 10th of a second quicker. So if Terry Mattinson can keep that up, and McBride seems to be running them slower laps of the 0.2s as we just see them cross the line again, and McBride down to a 0.1 again. So if McBride keeps making them tiny little mistakes each time by, the gap is going to keep coming down, and it has actually come down again, Will. It's only now down to 5/10 of a second on the racetrack. So very interesting to see how this battle for the top 5 will progress.
And you've got to remember as well that long green flag periods here, Scott, they really do take it out of these drivers. This isn't just a mentally difficult race, it's a physically difficult race as well, because these guys are turning off laps less than 17 seconds on the racetrack, and you know, they've got to hit every single line perfectly, get out of the gas, get back onto the gas, turn that car, use those in-car tools, and Richmond is always one of the most difficult tracks that the ISOWC IndyCar Series goes to.
Certainly a very good point. I mean, with the short nature of the circuit being only 3/4 of a mile, and such the fast pace you get drivers running about 170 miles an hour, it's pretty tough. As finally, Nigel Munif does make a pit stop. It has to be under green flag. But at the end of lap 124, it's incredible. He has gone almost half distance on one set of tyres and one tank of fuel, which means that he is coming back in. Which means possibly, if he gets lucky, he could only have to make one pit stop in this race, and that you have to say is an incredible feat by the fact that he's gone and said half distance on one set of tyres and fuel. Finally comes in, but he'll find himself at a disadvantage. So he's now going to be hoping that if he makes his pit stop, that the caution comes out pretty soon to try and get the laps he'll lose while stationary. But coming back to the point we've made about obviously being a very tough circuit, it does make it rather, you don't really get a chance to relax on such a short circuit because it is 3/4 of a mile out long. So there's no real long straights or kind of longer corners to really start to kind of settle yourself down, obviously, before to get yourself prepared. It's literally just corners one after the other, and the straights are so short, it basically means you haven't got time to really take anything into account. You have to be constantly hitting those apexes, and that can be tough for you, as you said, physically, but also in terms of psychologically and mentally, in terms of keeping in concentration. Because the longer the race goes on at the green flag, unless you get a caution to start taking a break, the concentration is going to lapse, and that's what can cause you to make mistakes and bring out more cautions yourself by making incidents later on in the race.
Yeah, Scott Smith, by the way, is classified now as out of the race. I'm just trying to see whether there's an incident. Yes, he did. He hit the wall coming out of corner number 2, and that is why he put that car on pit road, and he is classified as out of the race for the time being. Now, of course, Nigel Maneef is classified as 2 laps down. You lose 2 laps here, pitting under green, Jake. And that's one of those things that these drivers have to bear in mind. You can get one of those laps back under caution. However, 2 laps, you're going to have to race to get back into that position. We know that Tim Doyle right now in that number 11 car has struggled to get himself back onto the lead lap. So for Nigel Maneef, he's playing a risky strategy as we enter now the second half of this event.
Yeah, really risky strategy for him coming down at pit road on the 124th lap. Very, very well done though, I must say, to make it that far on one tank of fuel and one set of tyres. You don't normally see many drivers make it that sort of distance on the one set and on that one tank of fuel, so very, very well done to him. But it's really going to affect him now if we get a caution come out, because Michael Dinkel is going to come down pit road, we suggest, when the caution does come out, which will only then give him 1 lap back, if that. So it's not really going to play into Nigel Maneef's hands, I don't think. I think it'd have been more sensible to pit under the last caution, so he's going to have to try and race his way back, like, as you said, like Tim Doyle has, and Tim Doyle has now passed Dennis Garis as well, so Garis really struggling after he touched that wall, but Tim Doyle really making some good progress on the racetrack, but Gary Borkenhagen is sitting in behind him as well.
He is, and Borkenhagen having a good running right now in that broken aero number 8 machine. And Borkenhagen, we've seen him do very well on both the road courses and the ovals. It's a bit like Dinkel, hasn't always had the pace of Dinkel now, Jake, but the number 18 car, the broken aero machine of Gary Borkenhagen, you have to say, is one of the better pure racers on both the ovals and on the road courses.
Yeah, he really is a consistent driver on both. He's sort of a dark horse, really. Nobody really expects him to do anything and make anything of it, but he does have a real good sense of luck around him. He does get very lucky, but also he does have a really good driver skill, and that's what he shows at every race, and he does consistency, and consistency is what gets you places and what gets you points. It's alright being fast and stuff like that, but consistency is the key, and that is something Gary Borkenhagen thrives in, is consistency. So very nice to see him running in P3 again, and he really does deserve a really good finish after he's had some very poor run of luck in the ISOWC so far.
He has had some very bad luck indeed right now, but now we're working ourselves into lap number 140 of 250 here, and the laps tick off very, very quickly here as now Dinkel starts that 140th lap. And you have to say, actually, despite the fact we had a couple of cautions in the first 100 laps, it has had a very green flag field as event, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, most of the incidents have been fairly under green flag, but they haven't been substantial enough to warrant a caution, which has been pretty interesting to see, because they've kind of been incidents that haven't really compromised anyone else. They haven't been in a position where it's going to be forcing anyone to possibly try and get around or be in immediate danger. They've all been kind of incidents where they kind of happened rather quietly, or not so much in terms of the leaders, but ones that effectively they've been able to clear them pretty quickly, which hasn't warranted the pace car to come out at any point, which has allowed just some clean, trouble-free running. So it's pretty interesting to see on a circuit that's short as Richmond, to see so many green flag laps. But I guess for some drivers it's a benefit, for some it's others that they're looking to try and make up time from pit stops or from earlier problems, like Tim Doyle, especially Nigel Maneef, who's now 2 laps down, and he would love to have a caution right now, because he'll know the fact he'll have the benefit to make up those 2 laps back under yellow flags, whilst everyone else has to make their second pit stops.
And now the guys working themselves onto lap number 144 of 250 here in the ISOWC at Richmond 250. Don't forget as well, ladies and gentlemen, in 1 week's time we will head back to the ISOWC IndyCar Series as the drivers take on Texas Motor Speedway. It's a 1.5 mile oval that has 24 degrees of banking. It's famous as hosted IndyCar racing pretty much ever since it's open, and in 1 week's time drivers will try and take on the mammoth that is Texas Motor Speedway, try and get themselves a W next to their name in the IndyCar Series that we see here on RaceSpotTV. Starts out for that will once again be 6 PM GMT. You can see all the action live here on RaceSpotTV in just 1 week's time. Michael Dinkel now has a 4.2 second advantage over Michael Armstrong as they complete lap number 146 of 250, and actually Dinkel is getting about a tenth of a second every single lap over his closest competitor of Michael Armstrong, Jake.
Yeah, he really is extending this gap. We mentioned it earlier in the show, and we mentioned it at previous races. We didn't know how dominant he would be on the oval side. We're seeing him very dominant on the road, but whether he'd be able to progress that onto the oval is something we questioned a lot, and I don't know why we question it, Will, because he is showing right now why he is a dominant force and why he is currently leading the points in the ISOWC Championship. And just as Dennis Garis said, he lets his teammate through. I think he tagged the wall again there, Will, so Dennis Garis not having the best of race either.
He's having a very good race actually right now, but other drivers not having a good race, and Garis is one of those drivers who is struggling, as you just said there. He scored 2 laps down in that number 16 car right now, and he's actually got himself Dujon Baldwin ahead of him on the racetrack. Car actually, Michael Dinkel onto pit road right now from the race lead. Michael Dinkel coming down onto pit road. Now, in the ISOWC IndyCar Series, drivers have to make sure that they run on the apron through corners number 3 and 4 and then re-merge onto the track out of turn number 1 and 2 there. So it's one of those things that's a little bit different from what you see generally on the iRacing.com IndyCar Series. Dinkel doing a good job there getting that car onto pit road. He's going to take himself 4 fresh tyres, and he will top up with some local race cars as well. But it's actually Michael Armstrong who now leads this race, as Dennis Garis is going to come onto pit road this time by, and pit road is going to be a very busy place in the next couple of laps, Scott.
Yeah, indeed. Of course, this is where we're going to see some crucial green flag pit stops, and of course, anyone wanting a caution will hope that it's right now if they're especially running low on fuel. But Michael Dinkel rejoins now. Of course, a lap down on leader Michael Armstrong. Back down effect, he's now 8th position, I think. Now, but also incredibly, look who has actually popped up ahead of him. Actually, it's 90 scored as he comes across the line. But Tim Doyle, of course, waiting out of sync, is actually ahead of him right now on the racetrack. Of course, on the same lap as Dinkel right now, because of course Dinkel is a lap down after making his pit stop. But this should be intriguing to see exactly how long Tim Doyle can go before he has to make his second stop. And now we have to wait and see as Michael Armstrong has also made his pit stop from the lead, and now gives the lead to number 8 of Terry Martinson in the number 8 machine as he comes across the line to lead. Gary Borgenhagen is also into pit road as well, as also is Niall McBride is exiting from 4th. So some crucial pit stops being made by the front runners. Robert Gross also leaving his pit box right now. So it's a huge reshuffle of the top 10 right now as drivers make their pit stops. Michael Armstrong's got back out in 2nd spot, it seems, so a decent stop for him. He gets back going once more, and we'll start to see it shake out a little bit more as they come through. But Terry Martinson hasn't pitted just yet, and he's going to try to stay out for a little bit longer. So it's been intriguing to see, one, how Tim Doyle comes up through the field. He's now cracked the top 10, and also to exactly how far Michael Dinkel can get back up, as I think Tim Doyle's actually just pitted because he was up there quite far, but now he's down 2 laps, which means that he is now possibly down in 9th, while Dinkel is now up to 3rd place and challenging Dujon Baldwin, the Brazilian, up the inside into 2nd place, takes it with consecutive ease.
He does, yeah. That was a very easy pass there for Michael Dinkel in that number 10 car, getting past Dujon Baldwin in the number 80 machine there as they work themselves out of corner number 4 once again. Now, Terry Martinson, he is still classified as running on the racetrack, and he has not pitted under this green flag cycle as we work ourselves on lap number 159 now out of 250 at Richmond International Raceway. Now, all these drivers just need to do one more pit stop to get themselves to the end of this event. I'm actually having a look back to see the last time that Martinson pitted. I believe it was under one of those cautions there, Jake. That's going to put him in some good position right now if he gets a caution period in the next 20 or so laps, because he pretty much might actually be one of the few cars scored on the lead lap. And we're going back now to the 2009 IndyCar race where exactly the same thing happened, and drivers were pinned 1 lap down after a sequence of green flag pit stops.
Yeah, really interesting to see how Terry Martinson is going to run this could be final stint of his, because he did pit on the last caution we had, so that is going to give him a lot more fuel than the rest of the drivers that didn't come down pit road. But Michael Dinkel is now currently a lap down, so if Terry Martinson did come down pit road, Dinkel would then take up that race lead. But the likes of Nigel Manaf, Niall McBride, Timo Isinyemi, Robert Grosser and Tim Doyle, they're all going to be stuck a lap down because they're currently 2 laps down on the racetrack. But obviously they'll get their 1 lap back, but they're going to be a lap down, and them drivers were actually running in the high positions. Niall McBride, I think, was running P4, and Timo Isinyemi was about P5, P6 position as well. But Tim Doyle taking a pit stop there, I thought he'd have been able to make it a lot further than what he did though, Will.
Yeah, and let's not forget that Tim Doyle chose track position, Scott, over actually getting himself topped up on fuel. And that's a strategy which might not actually work out for Tim Doyle. Because this second half of the race has had a very green flag feel to it, you have to argue that if Tim Doyle did come into pit road on the last caution, yes, he wouldn't have had that track position with these single file restarts, but he'll be in a much better position if the yellow did come out right now. That number 11 40 Time Machine car is scored in 9th position, but he still scored 2 laps down. Of course, that will be down to about 1 lap once Hamilton comes in.
Yeah, but the thing we have to remember, of course, is that he did have those early run problems which forced him to come back into the pits twice in 2 laps, which is the reason why he's running back down in 9th position. So, of course, as you said, a caution would certainly be heaven sent for Tim Doyle right now to try and get himself back up through the order. He is trying to get himself around the... I'm trying to see which car it is in front. I think it's the 12 of Robert... No, it's not the 12 of Robert Gross. So it's actually the 3 of Team Isayemi, who's actually battling for position right now in 8th place. So Tim Doyle looking to make a move for position pretty soon as he works lap number 165, of course, 2 laps down on the leader right now. Of course, the next cars he has to try and get around, of course, are going to be Niall McBride and Nigel Marneef in 7th and 6th respectively, but they're considerably a little bit further up the racetrack than the current battle for 8th positions. Tim Doyle has got around him so far, so Tim Doyle is up now to 8th position, has made the move on Isayemi, fairly simple pass, and he's now got himself clear track for the moment, at least to try and charge after McBride in 7th. So he's going to have to try and hope for some more clean running, but also a caution period to give himself another lap back, can give him a better chance of moving forward towards the top 5 coming to the end of this latter stage of this race.
Yeah, and Tim Doyle right now, to give you an idea of where he is on the racetrack compared to Terry Matinson, Tim Doyle coming down into corner number 3, Terry Matinson working himself down the back straight, almost actually a lap ahead of Tim Doyle right now. So there's a danger that if Matinson stays out for too long, he will start putting drivers 3 laps down this event, and that's a lot more than what they get under a green flag pit stop. And Terry Matinson's last lap was a 16.119. However, Matinson, he's not been the fastest guy on the racetrack right now, but he's got the strategy kind of nailed to absolute pieces, you have to say, Jake.
Yeah, strategy a big part in this race, and we mentioned that earlier on, how Tim Doyle and the rest of the drivers would play their strategies out, whether they'd rather take the track position and be near the back or near the front, or take that fuel and sort the fuel run out. And Terry Matinson's really done both of that at the moment. He's got a good track position. He has also got a really good fuel run. I think he was one of the only, I think there was about 4 drivers that actually came down onto pit road on our last caution, so he did make a really good decision to come down, and that has trapped a lot of drivers a lap down so far. But I think there's a call from Terry Matinson coming down pit road this lap.
Yep, and we still have just 1 car scored on the lead lap. However, we have 4 cars scored 1 lap down and 5 cars scored 2 laps down. And the one thing we haven't yet talked about is how difficult pit road entry can be in these cars, and this is why this field is a lot more spread out than what it would have been, as Matinson is actually now onto pit road. So we'll turn our attention to him as we have got him onto pit road right now, working himself on lap number 175 of 250. He's going to get 4 fresh tyres. He will top up with some okay race gas as well. Pit road speed here is 40 miles an hour. You see that Tim Doyle's, Terry Matinson is classified towards the rear of the pit road. He had to come through a lot of adversity in the early going to get himself up into position. We'll see where he does come out once timing and scoring updates. But pit road entrance and exit here, Jake, is very, very difficult, and that is why this field is a lot more spread out than what we're used to.
Yeah, very difficult, especially as in the ISOWC, drivers must enter pit road going into turn 3. You're not allowed to enter on the middle of turn 3, shall we say, as they do in the actual iRacing IndyCar Series. So drivers have to slow down a lot quicker onto that yellow apron, and once you go below that yellow line and onto the apron wheel, it really does affect the balance of the cars, and drivers really do need to think about how they enter pit road, because too much speed can put you into the wall and that would end your race. But also the rejoin, drivers have to really think about where they're going to rejoin, because you don't want to rejoin too low and then collide with another driver. You sort of have to come to the high side and come to the wall after exiting the pits and hope the track is clear. But all drivers managing to do that very cleanly so far. We normally do see an incident or two with pit entry or pit exit, but we've not seen one so far.
John Baldwin now onto pit road as well. He's going to give up that third place, which he was battling with Michael Armstrong for P2 overall. He comes into that 24th pit stall. He's going to get himself 4 fresh tyres, top himself up with race gas, and he will be good to go to the end of this event. But he'll be classified 2 laps down after all is said and done. But Michael Dinkel now leads by 4.2 seconds over Michael Armstrong. Gary Bolkenhagen is running right now in that 3rd position. 5 cars scored on the lead lap. Another 5 cars scored 1 lap down, Scott. This field really has got itself spread out a little bit now.
Yeah, of course, so we keep talking about cautions, and caution would certainly be something that would help to spice things up a little bit more, of course, with roughly around 70 odd laps to go in this race. Matinson, of course, on that pit stop hasn't actually put him in too bad a stead. He's out, of course, still on the lead lap, but of course now in 5th position, so that could put him in possibly in a really good position, seeing he's one of the latter guys to pit, and that could certainly put him back into contention for the race victory if there was a caution right now. Tim Doyle, of course, would certainly appreciate that as well. He's up to 7th place and chasing after Niall McBride in the 41 car. And also looking down the back of the field, Dennis Garis has dropped back even further outside the top 10 in 11th position, and trying to chase after Duljon Baldrin, who he himself is embroiled in a bit of an on-track, a track position battle at least, with Nigel Marneef, who himself is running in 4th, doing a great job to stay with Gary Bolkenhagen, and he certainly isn't doing too bad to get those laps back. Bolkenhagen a couple of seconds ahead, so wonder exactly what impact he can make to try and close in. He's got a couple more cars and lap traffic to get around, but so far, as you said, the top 5 on the lead lap, fairly spread out, nothing too much going on effectively, so if it stays like this until the end, it could be fairly uneventful, but at least it'll be fairly consistent. I'm sure that Michael Dinkel will certainly appreciate it, almost 4 seconds in the lead, and fairly trouble-free.
Yeah, this race has been pretty fast ever since those 3 early cautions in this event. Now working ourselves on lap number 186 here at the Richmond International Raceway. We'll be back in just a moment's time after these messages and a word from your RaceSpotTV station. You are watching the 6th round of the ISOWC IndyCar Series here from Richmond International Raceway.
Simulated racing can be awesome, but it can also be kind of a free-for-all. Interestingly, auto racing faced the same problem in its earlier days. Whether it was on the back roads, the beaches, or the city streets, the racing was fun. But there was always a certain level of chaos and danger, until some folks came along and put some order to all of this. Stuff like official racetracks, regulations about weight and equipment, and enforcement of standards. That's what gave us high-speed excitement, fast-paced action, and photo finishes. That's when racing became racing. The guys over at iRacing.com have made the same transformation in the world of sim racing. Sure, they've got the most accurate tracks and realistic cars out there, but that's just the start. See, iRacing analyzes the performance and results of each driver in every race, so you can be sure you're always placed in races where the competition will be tight, and that those reckless drivers who ruin it for us all are kept in the pits. Not to mention that with over 45,000 active members already in their vast community, you can find races day and night, so you can always get in on the action. You can even join a league of your favorite series. And since updates are always automatic, you don't have to worry about software and can focus on the track. Zip up your fire suit and check out iRacing.com.
The ISOWC IndyCar Series on RaceSpotTV is brought to you by iRaceForLife.org. With the partnership with the ISOWC IndyCar Series and iRaceForLife.org, $5 going to the winning charity of choice from every single race. Also brought to you in part by And One Designs, the official graphics partner of RaceSpotTV and the ISOWC IndyCar Series. And also brought to you by the One in Dave Show, 6:30 PM Eastern Time, live and exclusive on Glacier TV. Well, we had 3 cautions in the early going, but since then we've been green flagged since then. And these drivers have done a green flag pit stop, and they are just about 55 laps away from concluding this event. Will Vincent still along with Scott Woodward and Jake Cameron. And Scott, this race really has been a green flag race, which is not something we generally expect from Richmond. Generally expect somewhere between 6 and 8 cautions in this event. Only 3 cautions here today.
You have to admit these guys have been fairly well behaved out there in terms of after the initial cautions that we had at the start of the race, but so far they've managed to settle down. Of course, I think maybe the fact that because we have had so many cautions, so many green flag retirements, but that has thinned out the field quite a bit, and that's the reason why these guys have been able to run at such a pace that they have without too many cautions. But we're going to have to be careful here. We are heading towards the final 50 laps of the race, the final 5th of the race. where concentration levels start to drop. You know, they start to get a little bit tired. Of course, the fact that you don't really get a break on a circuit like this in terms of being able to steady yourself for the next corner. You're just an assault of turning left, you know, one after the other, of course, going through all 4 turns, and not really letting up on the throttle that too much. It means, of course, that these guys have to keep their wits about them for all 250 laps and all the laps whilst it's under green flag. And so some of them might certainly welcome a caution, not necessarily just for trying to get themselves back a couple of laps back if they are a lap down, but just to get a break, because they haven't had one for such a while. So if they can maybe get a bit of a time to compose themselves once again under a caution, get themselves fired up once again, and also if they need to also make a pit stop, which crucially could be important to try and see exactly where they're going to end up finishing this race, then it could make for an exciting final 50 laps. So we now hit just completing now. Michael Dinkel has officially just completed 200 laps, so we've got just under 50 still to go.
Indeed so, and a couple of people that really want to see a caution right now are people like Noah McBride, Tim Doyle, Timo Isiniemi and Robert Grosser. They all scored 1 lap down on this event. However, Tim Doyle, you have to say, has done a good job, Jake, being able to get himself back up into that 7th position after his adversities in the early going. He's been able to pass Grosser and Isiniemi, being able to work through some traffic as well. And actually, I'm having a look to see where Tim Doyle is in comparison to Michael Dinkel, and he's not overly that far behind. He's actually just coming out of corner number 4 right now, past the start finish line. Dinkel working himself down into turn number 2 onto the backstretch, and Tim Doyle, I think he's going to try and get himself back onto that lead lap if he has anything left in his tank, because he wants to be in the running if there is a late race caution.
Yeah, he really does want to be in the running. He had that early problems, really, whether he touched the wall or got a bit of wing damage. We'll have to get confirmation of that at the end of the race, but he did bring it down pit road twice under 1 caution, which did set him back a lap down, but he has done really well. Actually, he went down 2 laps after the last set of pit stops, and he got his lap back when Terry Mattinson went down pit road. But he's going to be also trying to chase down Noah McBride in 6th position, but then that means he will be the first of the lap down cars. But in the IndyCar Series, we do not have lucky dogs, so drivers will have to fight their way back to get onto the lead lap, and that is something Tim Doyle is used to with some of the strategies he does run well. He tends to give up track position for the pit stops and for the fuel tank, and he is used to coming back from a lap down or 2.
TV update, by the way, on track temperature is 84 degrees Fahrenheit, and northerly wind or 2 miles an hour, and race relative humidity is 20%. Now, Jake, one of the things that this track is very different to normal is that we're running under daytime conditions here today. Generally, these drivers run Richmond at night, and the way that changes the balance of this race car means essentially that they're going to have to deal with more tightness, more understeer. We've seen a number of drivers be kicked out from that from turn number 2 already, and their car is just hitting the wall on the outside line. Now, this daytime night track is actually a lot safer on the restarts, but under a long green flag condition, it's a lot more difficult for these drivers. They have to get out of the gas a lot more. They have to use those in-car tools a lot more compared to what they used to. And it seems to be that Dinkel actually is the one who's benefited the most from this.
Yeah, really have to use them in-car tools a lot more to stop the car from being so tight. They need to loosen it up with that weight jacker. Adding more weight jacker will obviously change the way the rear end feels and is positioned, and it will change whether you tighten the car up or loosen the car up. Same with the arb adjustments. You can have front anti-roll bar and rear anti-roll bar. They go from 1 to 5 on the settings. They will either loosen the car up or tighten the car up as well. So it is all down to them in-car adjustments. It does make a big difference, and to be honest, at the moment, I think Michael Armstrong is using them adjustments to the best of his ability. He's got that gap down between him and Michael Dinkel to just 3 seconds on the racetrack, but he is currently stuck behind ex-teammate Noah McBride in that last lap motorsports car. Michael Armstrong, an ex-member of that team, and he really is working his way through this track and through the lap traffic very well. But another driver coming with him, Tim Doyle. Hell, he's made some real good ground so far. He will be on the back of Noah McBride this time by. He'll actually make the pass in turn 3 on the exit of turn number 4. He makes the pass, so he now moves up into that P6 position, and I'm sure he'll be wanting to go with Michael Armstrong. Actually, no, he's going to go up the inside of Michael Armstrong, and he's going to be trying to get that lap back, what we were talking about a minute ago.
Yeah, and this is going to be interesting to see now. Can Tim Doyle actually pull Michael Armstrong around the racetrack? because he now is scored, what, 3.5 seconds behind your race leader. Last time by, Tim Doyle did a 16.125. Michael Dinkle is 16.131. And let's not forget, Scott, that was when Tim Doyle had to negotiate 2 cars, go down to the inside, and that's when you generally slow in negotiating traffic. Tim Doyle is on a mission right now. Now, that last time by put it even between those 2 drivers, but if TD can actually get anything out of his car, then actually he can get himself back on the lead lap, and anything can happen from then on if we get a late race caution.
There's a reason why we said that Tim Doyle's one of the best drivers in the series, and that's exactly the reason why. He can set incredibly fast lap times, despite the fact he's getting himself around 2 cars, one of them for position and one of them for trying to get himself back onto the lead lap. And he's absolutely just charging right now, of course, back in 6th position. And he's definitely making a point that if he hadn't had those early race problems after that first and after he made that first set of pit stops, he would certainly be up there, at least still in the lead, and definitely taking the fight to Michael Dinkle, who is still 3.5 seconds ahead of Michael Armstrong right now. And this is, of course, remember, of course, now that Doyle's just got around Armstrong, until Doyle actually managed to pull away, actually be clear enough to effectively so there isn't so much turbulent air in front of Armstrong, he's not exactly going to be closing in too much. Although that said, he said that, of course, if Armstrong can be just stuck, could try and keep as much as he can behind Doyle and not be affected too much by the aerodynamic turbulence, but try and use him as a bit of a pull to try and tow him around the racetrack, then possibly he could start to gain some time. Though, as we said that, he was at 3.4, the gap has got back up to 3.6, which means now that Dinkle, who is in fairly clean air I can see, is taking full advantage of that and starting to keep extending his gaps. So it's intriguing. It's the trade-off between getting as much of a tow as he can and getting stuck behind the dirty air that Michael Armstrong has to try and find the middle ground in. But so far, it seems already that Tim Doyle got around Michael Armstrong, and already he's starting to pull away fairly quickly. So Tim Doyle on a mission right now, and if he can do something, he has to do it pretty quickly.
Indeed, so his last 2 laps have been in the 5th.
Sorry.
Yeah, Marneef is now up into the 5th position, actually, there, in that 069 car. In fact, he's on pit road. We'll take that back. He's on pit road now, so he's going to have to make a late race stop. And, of course, let's not forget, Marneef is a driver that came onto pit road before all of the others that last time by. So, with 28 laps to go, you got to say, actually, potentially, Jake, all these other guys might have to make one more pit stop.
Yeah, they may just have to actually make one more pit stop. So Tim Doyle's strategy we were talking about earlier could actually play out for him, Will, because he did make a later pit stop than everyone else on the last round of stops. And Nigel Marneef was actually one of our earlier pitters as well. So he came in about 3 or 4 laps before Michael Dinkle. He made that brilliant 124 lap run on fuel and tyres, which is something we generally don't see at Richmond in the IndyCar. We normally see about 80 laps, and then drivers will bring the car down pit road. But just with 25 laps to go now, Michael Dinkle will probably have to bring that car down pit road, I'd say, Will.
Yeah, we're getting word that some of these drivers are close on fuel, but they think they are good to go to the end. So this is going to be an interesting one to deal with towards the end of this event. And that might actually be one of the reasons why Armstrong has fallen off the pace of Dinkle a little bit. He's now 4 seconds behind your race leader, Michael Dinkle, as he's actually going to negotiate some lap traffic. And that's Tim Miller. He goes to go past. And Michael Armstrong now gets past Tim Miller and puts him another lap down to P2. Dinkle last time by a 16.062. Tim Doyle, however, did himself a 16.042. Now, Tim Doyle was actually faster the 5 laps previous, as he's going to be again this time by, but TD is looking like that he's closing up to the rear of Dinkle, but I don't think he's got enough unless, you know, something really dramatic happens in this race now, Scott. Yeah,
this is going to be pretty intriguing, of course. These top 5 look fairly set at the moment, of course. I mean, Terry Mathiesen's only about 4th. He's only about 1.3 seconds off Borgenhagen, but looking at how much traffic there is around them, to be fair, he's got to get around another lap car, which I think possibly could be the 3 of Timo Sanyemi. Yes, it is, the 3 of Timo Sanyemi, who is himself a lap down anyway. So this is going to be intriguing. The top 5, there really has to be a late caution with just over 20 laps to go if there's to be any kind of change in this kind of field whatsoever. But it's been, as I said, it's intriguing that this green flag period has really started to make this a fairly clean race. We're down to just 12 cars running, 4 cars on the lead lap. The car at the back of the field is still Tim Miller for 91, with his 10 laps down on the field, but still on the racetrack, circulating in 12th position. So I'm not sure what to make of this final 20 laps. I think it could be fairly uneventful unless somebody gets it wrong and has a lapse in concentration. But so far, Michael Dinkle proving that he was not just strong on the road courses, he is fairly strong on the ovals, which means that if he is a fairly competent all-rounder, he's rest this with 10 races to go in the season. These guys in the rest of the pack have to go back to the drawing board, or if they can't find an alternative strategy to try and beat him, they have to be very worried to try and see if there's anyone that can beat him for the title this season.
Indeed so. Young O, as a driver who's always been good, both on road courses and on ovals. You have to include people like Matt Cook, Joshua Chin in that mix as well. People also like Brandon Lichtenberg, Brandon Trano, when they broke in Aero Stable, they've always been good on both of that. And now you've got to add Michael Dinkel to that mix. And Dinkel, you have to say, he really has delivered here today, Jake, because he's led the most laps. He's going to get the bonus point to leading the most laps here. He set the fastest lap of the race, and he has just been ultra consistent since the drop of that green flag. And that's like, this is a driver that started here today in the 3rd position on the racetrack. He then pretty much got to the race lead in the early going, has led ever since then. Dinkel has just been unstoppable wherever you put him in the ISOWC IndyCar Series.
Yeah, he really has, and also looking at practice times as well, where he was the quickest in practice as well. So he really has came to Richmond and shown us all he is a force to be reckoned with in the ISOWC and in the IndyCar, because he is consistent on both road and oval, and it is nice to see. There's not many people that you can see run consistently on oval and road. You named a couple of them there, and Michael Dinkel has to be added to that list, because someone that can do them sort of lap times and be that consistently quick has to go down in the history, because there's not many drivers. There's one in about 100 drivers that can do a road car and an oval car and set them up to be this quick. So hats off to Michael Dinkel, really consistent run, and he's pulling that gap away every time. But someone else who we put in them books as well, Tim Doyle, is another great driver. He's consistent on the oval and on the road side, and he's closing that gap in on Michael Dinkel.
He is closing that gap indeed, but at the same time, you've got to consider the fact that we've got less than 20 laps to go. Dinkel has got a commanding lead, and therefore, you got to say that Dinkel has probably just got that weight down just a little bit. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, in 1 week's time, we head over to Texas Motor Speedway for the 7th round of the ISOWC IndyCar Series. That'll be 228 laps around Texas, and that'll be here on RaceSpotTV as we begin our progression towards the ISOWC Indy 500, which will take place on the 27th of July, 4 p.m. GMT, a special start time for that event. And that is coming up in just 2 months' time and a little bit less. And that will be, of course, in the DW12 as it makes its appearance onto the ISOWC IndyCar schedule. Dinkel now has a 4.5 second lead over Michael Armstrong. To give you an update on some of the guys out of the race, you've got Nigel Markakakon. I'm sorry, I'll say that back again. Martin Nagelkirchen, James McClure, Michael De Jong, Christian Manson, Paul Jennings, Eric Davis, Matt Kingsboot, Renan Lopez, Dave Jinks, and Cam Stark, all classified as out of the race, as is Xavier Bora and Scott Smith. Now, we have got some guys who are scored laps down but are still running. People, for example, like Dujan Baldwin, Nigel Manaf, Tim Grosser. And the thing is, Scott, is that under these kind of like long green flag conditions, it is going to make things difficult for guys who are off the pace, because they are getting laps pretty consistently.
Yeah, they are. I mean, Tim Doyle, of course, for example, he's been charging, but in fact, he's actually heading into the pits. No, or he was, in fact. I'm not sure what's gone on there, but was he pulled onto the pit apron.
Slowed down. Yeah, I think he might have got loose.
Tim Doyle.
Not sure, I'm just having a look there. I think he came onto pit road, missed pit road entry, came back up to speed. Now, this is actually something that I did back at Talladega a couple of years ago, and now Tim Doyle comes back. Actually, I think this is what it is. Tim Doyle realised that if he came onto pit road, he would have got himself a penalty there because of the fact that he came onto pit road too late, Jake.
Yeah, he did. We mentioned it as actually our race leader is down pit road as well. Michael Dinkel is down pit road. Wow. Michael Armstrong will take the lead, and this is just with 3 laps of the race left to run. So Michael Dinkel did not have enough fuel to make it to the end. Will Michael Armstrong have enough fuel? He's coming down the back straight now. He will pass the pit entry. He will continue out on the track. This is a big play into this race, but as you said, Tim Doyle, he would have got a penalty for not entering pit lane quick enough.
Yeah, so then it's a lap and a half to go now for Michael Armstrong, who's taken the lead of this race in the late going. Dinkel will be shuffled down. About 5 laps to go. This time by the white flag in hand. 1 more lap to go for Michael Armstrong. Has he got enough fuel to get the job done? Gary Borgenhagen in the 2nd position. Terry Tintin right now is classified in the 3rd spot on the racetrack. Michael Armstrong coming down the back straightaway down into corner number 4. And after Dinkel had a dominant performance, it's actually going to be Michael Armstrong that takes victory here in the ISOWC IndyCar Series Series from Richmond International Raceway. Michael Armstrong actually gets the job done there. A little bit more fuel. He's able to get to the end of the race. And Michael Dinkle, who led so many laps here today, misjudged his fuel strategy. He'll be classified outside the top 5. Yes, Scott?
Unless that was no, I think that's probably just me just seeing it because he's trying to come through. But I thought for a second that Niall McBride was out of fuel, but that's obviously not the case because there's a few cars trying to crawl around. But no, I think Niall McBride has finished the race. I think as he comes across the line, has he? No, was that him?
No, that was actually him out of fuel. Yeah, a number of drivers were out of fuel at the end of this race. Niall McBride was one of them. You also had Michael Armstrong. He's literally just had half a lap of fuel extra. He ran out of fuel actually on that slow down lap. Gary Borkenhagen, I think he was out of fuel at the end of this race as well. He literally sputtered across the line. The second he finished, he ran out of fuel as well. A crazy finish to this event here, Jake, but you have to say that Michael Dinkle, for everything that he's done in the road courses, he just misjudged his fuel a tiny bit, and that cost him what would have been his 5th victory in a row.
Yeah, one hell of a crazy finish there. Michael Dinkle, he was running on his Ono for a lot of that last stint wheel, which does play a big difference into the fuel run, and I think Michael Armstrong there did just make that strategy work a little better. He did sit behind a few drivers, the likes of Tim Doyle and lap down cars, knowing that he needed to save that tiny bit of fuel just to make it to the end, and I think that was a really good strategy there from Michael Armstrong, but unfortunate there, very unfortunate for Michael Dinkle. He drove a dominant race, really dominant again, but at the end he didn't take enough fuel, and you know, strategy is part of these races, and he just didn't have this strategy to key today.
What a finish we have had. Results are up now on your screen from this, the 6th round of the 2014 ISOWC IndyCar Series. Michael Armstrong takes victory in a time of 1 hour 19 and 6 seconds. Gary Borkenhagen in the 2nd place. Terry Tinton in 3rd. Now McBride in 4th. Michael Dinkle in the 5th place. Then Timo Isinyemi, Robert Grosser, Nigel Maniv, Tim Dole and Dylan Bolshan round out your top 10. The rest of the time is coming up on your screen momentarily. But at the end of the day, Armstrong, a great victory there by him. He timed everything he needed to do to perfection, and you have to say that Dinkle lost that race, but Michael Armstrong actually played his race out perfectly, and we were saying, Scott, that he was going slower than Tim Doyle ahead of him. I think now we know the reason why.
Yeah, he was fuel saving. That's the reason why, because of course we said Tim Doyle and Michael Dinkle had to pit in the last couple of laps. And it was that difference in fuel saving right near the end, or in those final few stages of the race, that really saw him get across the line and take the victory. So I think Michael Dinkle, for massive credit to him for leading as long as he did. But of course, maybe he pushed a little bit too hard when it came to keeping out in front. Of course, he had a fair enough gap. He just needed to ease off just a tiny bit. He had enough advantage. Just pushing a little bit too hard on the fuel was the reason why it cost him. And he'll be absolutely kicking himself with the fact that he came up 3 or 4 laps short before having to come into the pit lane and get himself a splash and dash to get himself to the end of this race. But full credit to Michael Armstrong, a great playing strategy. He managed to get it done until towards the end, and he, in all fairness, credit goes to Michael Dinkle, a fantastic run, but at the end of the day, Michael Armstrong's the winner, and credit where credit's due. He's done a fantastic job. So I think a very well earned and thoroughly well executed victory.
And 2nd place there going to Gary Borkenhagen, number 18 Broken Arrow Machine. A good running by him, and also the guy in 3rd place, that Banshee Autosport driver, Terry Tinton, Jake.
Yeah, really great drive by Terry Tinton. He made a really good pit stop. He hung it out there for as long as he could, really, and he put everyone a lap down. Some drivers are 2 laps down, and then he came down pit road with probably, I'd say, about 50 laps to run, and that was him good to the end. And that was really a big decision he had to make, how much fuel to take, because you didn't want to take too much fuel because it would have weighed him down too much and could have cost him a few spots. But he really was closing in on Gary Borkenhagen as well. The gap between them was just over a second on the racetrack. Sorry, so he had a really solid showing again, and it's good to see Terry Tinton back.
It really is. And also, once again, Gary Borkenhagen, number 18 Broken Arrow Machine. A great job by him getting that 2nd place here. And Borkenhagen's one of those drivers you have to pay attention to, both on the road courses and on the ovals as well. We talked, of course, for much of this race about how good Michael Dinkle is. You've got to put the same thing on to Gary Borkenhagen there in the number 18 car. He's one of these drivers to watch in the 2014 ISOWC IndyCar Series. Now, to finish off your top 5, now McBride came home in that 4th position. We barely talked about McBride at all in this race, Jake, but the Irish driver came home in 4th place in number 41 LMM car. Good showing by him.
Yeah, probably the best Irish driver, should I say for his sake, Northern Ireland driver is, yeah, he's probably really happy with that finish. He did drop back very early on though, didn't he? He dropped back to about P10 position, and we thought that was him going back a lot more spots, but then we had them cautions where his teammate Matt Kingsbury, Cam Stark wrecked out, and also Dave Jinks went and Scott Smith went as well, and that really did give him a big helping hand, and then he just had to do the rest and drive consistently, which, given to Niall, he does drive very consistently, but just not that consistently quick. He will drive consistent though, so very good showing by him. And I think he's going to be back again in a week's time for Texas, and he always does go good round there as well.
And Scott, for Michael Dinkle in that 5th position, I'm guessing this is that whole thing. Sometimes you need to take more fuel than you think you need to.
Yeah, I think next time, of course, on the Ovals, when we go to, of course, the next event in the calendar, of course, in a week's time in a week's time in Texas, he'll be thinking next time maybe I should probably take a few more on his pit stop before he has to go to the end of the race. Next time I'll take a couple more laps with the fuel just in case. Seeing drivers, who have fallen foul of not taking as much fuel, only taking fuel as much as they think they need, rather than taking a couple of that extra just to be safe, just in case they think it's going to weigh them down or affect their pace. But in my opinion, in racing, sometimes it's better to be safe than sorry, and unfortunately, Michael Dink was feeling sorry for himself because he didn't get the job done, purely because he pushed a bit too hard and didn't fuel up enough on that last pit stop.
But Jake, in 1 week's time, we head over to Texas Motor Speedway, and Texas is a very different track from what we have at Richmond. It's a 1.5 mile oval, 24 degrees of banking. This track is fast, and these drivers in 1 week's time, we're taking on a track which historically in the ISOWC has always produced a green flag running.
Yeah, it always does produce some really top class racing around Texas, and not only that, but it's single file racing as well most of the time. The drivers tend to hold that bottom line. They call it the CCM line, where you can just run right around that white line on the bottom, and the only way around is on the top. But sometimes the weather conditions can play a big part in that, and you can't run that CCM line, as we call it, and that's where the interest in racing is going to happen, whether the drivers choose to go around the outside next week and we see some interesting stuff, or whether drivers just sit in line and wait and beat people on the pit road. But whatever happens, it's going to be a very, very interesting race, and don't forget, it is flat out the whole way around the 1.5 mile oval.
Indeed so, and we will see you in 1 week's time for that. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, that the Will and Dave show is on Glacier TV this evening. Start time for that will be 6:30 p.m. Eastern time even, as we'll recap everything that happened in the Indy 500, the Coke 600. We'll talk a little bit about the whole thing going on between Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg in Formula 1. So much more to talk about. That's the Will and Dave show, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, only on Glacier TV and RaceSpotTV. And also, in 1 week's time, we go deep into the heart of Texas for the next round of the ISOWC IndyCar Series, round number 7 of 16. That will be in 1 week's time, as we go to one of the fastest tracks on the schedule, as the drivers will take over 550 kilometers, 228 laps for that event. So expect to see some drivers really get themselves into top gear for that race, and that'll be in 1 week's time here on RaceSpotTV. Tomorrow we've got Neo Endurance GT Series, and that will be from Silverstone. Join myself, Will, and also Jake, Scott, the entire gang, Oscar, for that event. We've also got an exclusive onboard stream with the one and only Matt Tor. BBC right now. Support the greatest series in the world, which of course is the Verizon IndyCar Series, as the duel on Detroit starts in just a couple of minutes time. Myself, Will Vincent, along with Scott Woodwis and Jake Cameron, this has been an ISOWC presentation of the ISOWC IndyCar Series, and we'll talk to you a little bit later on. Bye bye.
It's time for those most famous words in motorsports. Drivers, start your engines!
Michael Conti comes up at a corner number 4 in the checkered flag. He wins his first NASCAR iRacing.